Samuel had always been a firm believer in God. Growing up, he was the kind of person who lived and breathed his faith. He sang in the church choir, led Bible study groups, and was known for his passionate street evangelism. If anyone had unwavering faith, it was Samuel. But life, as it often does, threw him into a storm so fierce that his faith was put to the ultimate test. It all began after Samuel graduated from the university. He had been hopeful, excited even about the future. After years of hard work, sleepless nights, and sacrifices, he believed he was finally ready to step into his destiny. Yet, reality had other plans. Despite his excellent grades and countless applications, he couldn't secure a decent job. Weeks turned into months, and the rejection emails piled up. Samuel's confidence began to waver. He had held on to his faith, trusting that God was preparing something better for him. But as time dragged on, things took a devastating turn. His father, the family's breadwinner, fell ill suddenly and couldn't walk. Then, as if fate wasn't done, his mother and two younger siblings also became terribly sick. It was like a dark cloud had descended upon his household. Hospital bills mounted, and whatever little savings they had quickly disappeared. The family was left with nothing, not even enough to eat. Samuel prayed fervently. At first, he begged God to heal his family and provide for their needs. He reminded God of how faithful he had been. His years of service in the church, the countless souls he had won for his kingdom, and how he never wavered in his devotion. Lord, I have been faithful to you. Why are you letting this happen to my family? Have you forgotten me? Samuel cried, tears streaming down his face. But day after day, nothing changed. The hospital bills kept coming. The hunger in their home grew unbearable. His father's condition worsened, and his siblings were too weak to even get out of bed some days. Samuel felt like he was being crushed under the weight of it all. At first, he tried to remain hopeful, believing that maybe this was just a test of his faith. But as weeks turned into months and the situation grew more desperate, frustration took over. Samuel started to feel betrayed. How could you? He muttered one day. How could you call yourself a God of love and watch my family suffer like this? All my life, I have served you, honored you, and this is my reward? What kind of God are you? He began questioning everything he had ever believed. The God he had trusted with his life now felt distant, silent, even cruel. And slowly, Samuel stopped going to church. The Bible that once brought him comfort gathered dust in the corner of his room. His prayers became half-hearted mumbles until they ceased altogether. One day, as his father coughed uncontrollably in the next room, Samuel sat on the edge of his bed, his head in his hands. He was drowning in despair. Anger bubbled up inside him, and before he knew it, he shouted into the emptiness of the room, God, you are a scammer. That's what you are. You make promises you don't keep. You say you will bless us, but you watch us suffer. You are no different from a con artist. You're just a scammer. The words hung heavy in the air. For a moment, Samuel felt a wave of guilt wash over him, but it was quickly replaced by the bitterness that had taken root in his heart. The hunger in Samuel's home was unbearable. His father lay weak on the mattress, coughing sporadically, while his siblings huddled in a corner, too tired to even cry. His mother, frail and pale, sat on the stool, staring blankly at the empty pots on the stove. There was no food, no money, and no strength left in any of them. Samuel sat on the floor, his head buried in his hands. He couldn't stop the tears from streaming down his face. The gnawing guilt in his heart felt heavier than the hunger in his belly. His parents had worked tirelessly to see him through school, sacrificing so much in the hope that he would graduate and leave the family out of poverty. But here they were, sinking deeper into despair, and he couldn't even provide them with a single meal. Anger boiled inside him, mixing with helplessness until it exploded. Samuel stood up suddenly and began pacing the room, his voice rising in frustration as he lashed out at the one being he believed could have stopped this. "God, where are you?" he shouted, his voice shaking with anger. "Where is this loving father you claim to be? Huh? You said you're full of compassion, but all I see is suffering. What happened to all those promises you made? The lions may grow weak and hungry, but those who seek the Lord lack no good things. Isn't that what Psalm 34 verse 10 says? Then why are we starving? Why are we suffering like this?" Samuel's mother looked up briefly, her sunken eyes filled with silent grief, but she said nothing. His siblings remained still, their energy completely spent. Samuel clenched his fist, his voice growing louder, angrier. "You said in Psalm 37:25, I was young and now I am old, yet I have never seen the righteous forsaken or their children begging bread. Look at us, God. Look at my family. Isn't this what begging bread looks like? Isn't this what being forsaken feels like? You said in Jeremiah 29:11 that you have plans to prosper us, plans to give us hope and a future. Really? Is this what prosperity looks like? Is this the future you had in mind for me, for my family? You are a scammer. You are nothing but a scammer. That's what you are. You make promises you don't keep. You lure people in with hope, only to leave them stranded in pain and despair." The room was silent except for Samuel's voice, echoing against the walls. "You said in Isaiah 41:10, do not fear, for I am with you. Do not be dismayed, for I am your God. I will strengthen you and help you. I will uphold you with my righteous right hand." Where is that righteous right hand? Where is it, God? Where is it? I see nothing but suffering and shame. He stopped pacing, his voice dropping into a bitter murmur. "If you knew life was going to be this painful, why did you even create us? Are we just toys in your hands? Do you enjoy watching us suffer? Is this what your compassion looks like? You are nothing but a scammer, a big scammer." His chest heaved as he sank back onto the floor, his hands trembling. The anger within him felt like a fire, consuming what little faith he had left. Then, suddenly, the room grew still. It wasn't the kind of silence that came from emptiness, but a weighty stillness that felt different. It was as if the air around him had shifted. Samuel froze. A strange warmth began to envelop him, spreading from the top of his head to the soles of his feet. It wasn't like the heat of anger he had just felt. It was soothing, calming, almost like a gentle embrace. For the first time in weeks, Samuel's racing thoughts stilled. Then he heard it, a voice, soft yet clear, cutting through the silence. "Samuel," the voice called. It wasn't angry or harsh. It was calm, steady, and full of authority. Yet, it carried an overwhelming tenderness that made Samuel's heart tremble. "Samuel," the voice echoed again. Samuel looked around the room, his eyes wide with confusion. The voice was distinct, yet he couldn't see anyone. But deep down, he knew who it was. He had heard this voice before, back when his faith was strong, back when he could feel God's presence so clearly. "Come with me to the market," the voice said, still gentle but firm. Samuel's heart pounded in his chest. A part of him wanted to ignore the voice, to rebel, to stay in his bitterness and anger. But another part of him, a deeper, quieter part, urged him to obey. He stood up slowly, the anger in his heart still bubbling, though it was now mixed with confusion and curiosity. "Why? What's the point?" he muttered, but the voice didn't answer. It didn't need to. Despite the bitterness still lingering in his heart, Samuel found himself obeying. He threw on his tattered sandals, and stepped out into the hot afternoon sun. The streets were dusty and crowded, filled with the hustle and bustle of the market life. Vendors shouted about their wares, children darted between stalls, and the smell of roasted corn and fried snacks filled the air. Samuel walked with a heavy heart, his thoughts clouded by resentment and doubt. Why am I even doing this? He murmured to himself. What could possibly be waiting for me here? But deep within, a faint spark of hope flickered, small, almost imperceptible, but enough to keep his feet moving. Whatever lay ahead, Samuel was about to find out. As Samuel entered the bustling market, the voice returned, firm yet full of warmth. Look ahead, the voice instructed. Look towards your right. Do you see that blind woman sitting by the roadside with her stick, begging for alms? Samuel turned his gaze to the right and saw her immediately. The woman was frail, her clothes faded and torn. She held a small tin cup in one hand and a walking stick in the other. Her empty eyes stared blankly into nothingness. Yet, her lips moved continuously. She was singing a hymn, a song of praise to God. Her voice, though strained and quiet, carried a melody that cut through the noise of the market. Yes, I see her, Samuel replied softly, his heart beginning to stir. She is praising me, the voice said, even though she is blind. She cannot see the sunrise or the faces of her loved ones. She stumbles in darkness every day of her life. Yet, she sings to me. She calls me good. She thanks me for giving her life, even when that life is hard. Samuel's eyes dropped to the ground. Now, the voice continued, look to your left. Do you see the woman with her child standing by the roadside, waiting to cross the road? Samuel shifted his gaze. There stood a woman, holding a small boy in her arms. The child's head lolled unnaturally to the side, and his limbs were limp. His vacant stare made it clear that he was an imbecile. The woman cradled him gently, her face tired but peaceful. Samuel could see her lips moving as she whispered words of gratitude. She too is praising me, the voice said. Her child cannot speak, cannot walk, and may never grow to care for her in her old age. But she thanks me for the gift of being a mother. She sees her child as a blessing, not a burden. Do you hear her prayers? She calls me faithful. Samuel swallowed hard, his throat dry. Now, look straight ahead again, the voice instructed. Samuel obeyed, scanning the crowd. Do you see that man limping, using a crutch to move from one stall to another? The voice asked. Yes, Samuel replied, noticing an elderly man struggling to walk. Even as he moved, the man greeted everyone he passed with a cheerful smile. And yet, he is thanking me. He is so grateful. That man praises me every day, the voice said. He thanks me for the leg he still has, for the strength to move, and for the grace to see another day. He lost his leg in an accident, yet he calls me a healer. He calls me a protector. He calls me a savior. He reverences me as his helper. Samuel's heart began to ache as the voice continued to show him more people in the market. He saw a man selling roasted corn who had a severe burnt arm. Yet, he hummed worship songs under his breath. He saw a young boy with torn clothes who danced joyfully to the sound of street musicians, his hands lifted as if in gratitude for life itself. He saw a vendor with only one eye, smiling as he helped customers to pick up vegetables, praising God for the little business he had. These people, the voice said, are going through challenges you cannot even begin to imagine. They face pain, poverty, and loss every day, yet they praise me. They chose gratitude over bitterness, faith over doubt. But here you are, Samuel, angry with me, fighting me, even with the mercy I have shown you. Samuel's knees felt weak. He stopped walking and stood still in the middle of the market, his eyes brimming with tears. The weight of the voice's words pressed heavily on him. Do you know? The voice continued, that some of those people I've shown you do not even have a roof over their heads. They sleep in the cold. Yet, they wake up each morning and thank me for giving them another chance at life. But you, Samuel, you and your family have a roof over your heads. Yet, you fight me. You have walls to protect you from the rain. But instead of gratitude, you are filled with anger. Samuel covered his face with his hands, ashamed. And what about food? The voice said, if you don't have food today, can't you be thankful that you have a mouth to eat it when it comes? Do you know there are people who have food but cannot eat? Their mouths are shut by sickness. Their throats cannot swallow. Their stomachs cannot digest. But you, Samuel, have a body that works, yet you fight me. Samuel fell to his knees in the middle of the market. He no longer cared about the stares of passers-by. Tears poured down his face as the voice spoke directly to his heart. Can't you fast for a day before the food comes? Can't you trust me to provide at the right time? I am the God who sees, the God who knows. I have not abandoned you, Samuel, but you have turned your heart away from me. You have allowed your pain to blind you to my mercy. Do you not see that my grace is still upon you? Samuel sobbed openly now, his heart breaking under the weight of the truth. The bitterness he had held onto for so long began to crumble, replaced by a deep sense of conviction. He realized that he had been so consumed by his own pain that he had failed to see the blessings still present in his life. Forgive me, Lord, Samuel whispered through his tears. Forgive my anger, my doubts, my ingratitude. I see it now. You are faithful. Even in my suffering, you are faithful, Lord. The voice spoke one final time, gentle and full of love. Rise, Samuel. Go home and trust me. I will provide for you and your family. But first, you must let go of your anger and believe in my goodness. I am with you always. Samuel stood slowly, his legs trembling. The market around him seemed different now. The noise didn't bother him. He looked again at the people the voices had shown him. The blind woman, the mother with the imbecile child, the man with the crutch, and his heart swelled with a new understanding. As he made his way back home, he didn't have all the answers, but for the first time in months, he felt peace. Something told him that this was the beginning of something new, a journey back to faith, gratitude, and hope. As Samuel walked home, his face swollen and streaked with tears, he replayed the words he had heard in the market. His heart was heavy with regret for the anger and doubt he had carried. As he turned onto a street just 2 blocks from his home, an unfamiliar man approached him. The man, dressed in simple yet clean clothes, looked at Samuel with a knowing smile and said in a calm, steady voice, Samuel, wipe your tears. God loves you and He truly cares for you. Make peace with the Lord. Be thankful to Him in every situation and watch Him turn your life around. Samuel froze, staring at the man in shock. He had never seen this person before, yet the stranger not only knew his name, but spoke directly to the turmoil in his heart. Samuel blinked, unsure of what to say, and the man simply nodded and walked away. As Samuel turned to look back at him a moment later, the man was gone. Samuel scanned the street in every direction, but there was no sign of him. His heart pounded as he realized this was no ordinary encounter. When Samuel finally reached his home, he fell to his knee. The sight of his parents and siblings, weary but alive, reminded him of the words he had heard earlier. With tears streaming down his face, Samuel cried to God, Lord, please forgive me. Forgive my anger and my doubts. I've been so focused on my pain that I forgot your goodness. Thank you for keeping my family alive. Thank you for the roof over our heads, for the air we breathe, for the chance to see another day. I surrender my worries and complaints to you, Lord. I trust you, and I thank you for all things. I will praise you in every situation, no matter how hard it gets. That night, Samuel and his family slept hungry again, but for the first time in a long time, there was peace in Samuel's heart. He felt a strange sense of joy, like a burden had been lifted. The next morning, Samuel woke up before sunrise. Instead of complaining or worrying about how the day would go, he began worshiping God with all his heart. His voice filled the small room as he sang songs of gratitude, his face radiating joy as though he had won a lottery. His siblings and parents watched in awe. Samuel didn't seem like the same person they had seen the day before. His transformation was so evident that even his younger brother joined in singing. After spending the morning thanking God, Samuel got ready to leave the house to search for jobs once again. Just as he reached for the door, his phone rang. The number was unknown. "Hello, am I speaking with Samuel Akinlabi?" "Yes, this is Samuel," he replied, his heart racing with anticipation. "Good morning," the voice on the other end said. "This is to inform you that your application for the post of an accountant in our office has been reviewed. We would like to know when you can resume your position." Samuel froze, stunned. I can resume today if that's okay with you," he stammered. The caller chuckled. "No need to rush. Kindly resume tomorrow. Use today to prepare yourself." Samuel could barely contain his excitement. As he ended the call, he dropped to his knees, thanking God with everything in him. Just as he was catching his breath, his phone beeped again. It was a notification of a bank transfer. A significant amount of money had just been deposited into his account. Shocked, Samuel immediately called the sender, a Sunday school teacher from church. "Sir, I just saw a deposit from you. Is there a mistake?" Samuel asked. "No mistake, Samuel," the man replied. "The Lord laid it in my heart to send you that money. Use it to take care of yourself and your family. God bless you." Samuel's voice cracked as he tried to express his gratitude. Thank you, sir. God bless you too." After ending the call, Samuel rushed to the market with the money, buying groceries and food supplies for his family. That day, they prepared a hearty meal, something they hadn't been able to do in weeks. As they ate together, laughter filled their home for the first time in what felt like forever. The next morning, Samuel put on his best shirt and trousers and headed to the office for his new job. When he arrived, he was surprised to find no interview waiting for him. Instead, he was handed an employment letter. As Samuel scanned the letter, his eyes widened. The salary offer was far beyond what he had expected for a fresh graduate. It was more than enough to take care of his family and save for the future. Samuel couldn't stop the tears from falling. He whispered a quiet prayer of thanks, overwhelmed by God's goodness. From that day on, Samuel's life took a different turn. He made it a daily habit to be conscious of God's love and to give thanks in all circumstances. Just as 1 Thessalonians chapter 5 verse 18 teaches, "Give thanks in all circumstances, for this is God's will for you in Christ Jesus." Samuel's testimony became a source of encouragement to many. He often told people, God is always intentional about us. Even when we can't see it, He's working. Never give up on Him because He will never give up on you. And indeed, Samuel's life became a living proof of God's faithfulness and love. I hope this story has blessed you. If you enjoyed the story, you will definitely love the next one. Click to watch now. I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.